Hello, everyone. Welcome to Community Bookstore's virtual event series. Bonsoir and Yorana. My name is Noah Mintz. I'm the store's event director, and Community Bookstore is celebrating over 50 years in business. We credit the continued support of readers, writers, and translators for this milestone. So thank you all for spending the evening with us. This conversation was originally scheduled for last week and postponed for technical difficulties. So thanks especially for tuning back in tonight and for your patience. I'm so thrilled to welcome Tahitian author Titaua Peu and translator Jeffrey Zuckerman for a discussion of the novel Pina, which is out now from Restless Books. They're joined in conversation by the novelist Nell Freudenberger, and we are also very grateful to have Ellen Sauchek here, who will be interpreting for us this evening. Now to some housekeeping before I properly introduce our guests. We've enabled Zoom's auto transcribe setting, so if your version of Zoom is up to date, hit the live transcription button on the bottom of your screen to enable closed captions. These will only work for English, and they are computer generated, so forgive any nonsense. You can always disable them if you wish. If you have any questions for tonight's guests, please click on the Q&A button, which is also on the bottom of your screen. We'll be asking those at the end of the program, so please don't be shy. There's a chat box through which I'll be posting a link to buy tonight's book if you haven't already. And one caveat is that we are all at the mercy of our own home internet connections, so bear with any technical issues that could arise, and we will resolve them as quickly as we can. We have a really stellar lineup of in-person and virtual events for you this fall, so head over to our website, communitybookstore.net, and sign up for our newsletter to stay up to date. One that I want to point out in particular is if you're watching tonight from here in New York, we hope you can join us in person at Congregation Beth Elohim on Wednesday, October 19th, as we welcome George Saunders back to Brooklyn for the book Liberation Day, his first collection of stories in a decade. He'll be in conversation with Brandon Taylor, and that program is up on our website now and taking registrations. But now, a little about tonight's guests, and we'll get started. Titaua Peu is a Tahitian author known for her politically charged, realistic portrayals of contemporary Polynesia. Pina, her second novel, won the Eugène Dabit Prize. She lives in Tahiti and is joining us this evening from a residency in Paris. Jeffrey Zuckerman is a translator of French, including books from Mauritius and now Tahiti. He won the French Voices Grand Prize for his translation of Pina, and he is zooming in from Manhattan. Also on screen is Ellen Sauchek, an incredible ATA certified French-English translator and interpreter who has worked in film, literature, and beyond, and who will be chiming in when Titaua speaks in French. Ellen is in LA right now, joining us from a hotel. So thank you, Ellen, for being here. And moderating the conversation is Nell Freudenberger, the author of 3 novels, most recently Lost and Wanted, and the short story collection Lucky Girls. Her fiction and nonfiction has been published in The New Yorker, Harper's, and The New York Times, and she is zooming in from here in Brooklyn. So now without any further ado, I will leave it to you thank you all for being here tonight.
Thanks so much, Noah. I just want to say thanks again to Community Bookstore, my favorite bookstore in the world, for hosting this event, and to Titaua Peu, who is up really late in Paris to be with us. I feel so lucky to be able to moderate this event. I came to Titaua's work after going to Tahiti to write a piece about science in the spring. And when I came home, I guess I just wanted to say that I think my biggest misconception traveling there, having only seen travel magazines and tourist postcards, was that I was going to a post-colonial society. I thought that Tahiti and its surrounding islands would have a relationship to France that would be similar to, for example, India's relationship to Great Britain. And when I got there, I realized how much of a misconception that was, how the enduring colonial relationship with France seemed to me to be detrimental to the liberty, to the education, the finances, and the health of the Tahitian people. And when I got home, I just wanted someone to explain to me the situation. And I read as many authors as I could find. And the book that spoke to me the most was Titaua's beautiful first novel, Mutismo, which is not yet available in English, but I hope soon will be. So that the title of that book is a melding of the French word for silence with a more complicated Tahitian word, that mu, which I'm probably pronouncing wrong, but it means a silence of someone who has something to say but remains quiet. And those silences come up again in Pina, and so I want to talk about that tonight. And because I assume most people haven't read Pina yet, we'll stop in the middle and we'll give Titaua and Jeffrey a chance to read from the novel. This just a page from this and from this beautiful translation. So Titaua, this novel is named for Pina, who is really the moral heart of the book. She's a young girl who has darker skin than the other members of her family, and she's treated differently because of it, both at home and at school. But there's a line that I love where you write, she was no Cinderella. This girl knew how to hate with all her being, all her little body. So I'm wondering what inspired you to write about Pina and this Tahitian family in particular.
Bonsoir tout d'abord. Ce qui m'a inspiré pour l'histoire de Pina, c'est quelque part les petites filles que je voyais autour de moi, donc, mais également un personnage d'un roman de Toni Morrison que j'aime beaucoup, qui est Pecola dans L'œil le plus bleu, de Bluest Eye, et c'est une petite dans laquelle je me suis reconnue, et comme on sait, les auteurs parfois parlent d'eux-mêmes dans leurs livres, dans leurs romans.
I think, first of all, good evening to everyone. I think what inspired me to write Pina was mainly the girls that I was seeing around me, because this is in part their story, but also the girls who are represented in other literature. And I'm thinking particularly of the young girl in The Bluest Eyes by Toni Morrison. She was also an inspiration. It's the same type of young girl character.
That's a really interesting analogy for an American audience. And I felt like this book was like Morrison's work, a tremendous gift in that the very first sentence of the book is in English is some quartier no, oh God, I'm so sorry about my French pronunciation. Please forgive me. I was sending Jeffrey screenshots of my Duolingo practice last night, and he was laughing at me. I think because he with me because the sentence I was learning was no, you cannot bring your goats to the wedding. I'm sure that this is going to come in really useful at some point. So anyway, some quartier nobody ever hears about. And so I'm always grateful to writers who write about the neighborhoods that no one ever hears about, and who trust readers to understand the complexity of their own community, who present it to us honestly in the way that this book does. It's no accident that there are few Tahitian novelists. The tradition is oral, and Reo Tahiti, the Tahitian language, was and continues to be suppressed by French occupation. As one of the most prominent novelists from your country, do you feel an enormous pressure to represent or speak for the Tahitian people?
Oui, honnêtement, je ressens beaucoup de pression aujourd'hui parce que lorsque j'ai sorti Mutisme, je ne savais pas que ça allait devenir un roman. J'ai écrit, mais sans savoir que que ce livre allait bouleverser mon pays, puisque c'était l'un des premiers romans coup de poing à Tahiti, en Polynésie, qui s'est levé contre la colonisation, la violence aussi dans la société et la pauvreté. Donc, au premier livre, je ne savais pas que j'allais être connue, en tout cas dans mon pays. Et lorsque j'ai sorti Pina, je me suis rendu compte que ma parole, mon écriture était très importante pour la plupart des lecteurs, en tout cas dans mon pays. Ils attendaient cette seconde parole. Donc oui, je ressens beaucoup de pression.
Yes, honestly, I did feel pressure this time. When I wrote my first book, Mutisme, I had no idea of the kind of impact that the book was going to have. And it was really a book that had a great deal of impact in Tahiti. And it was largely because I was one of the first people to be writing about some of these subjects, about life in post-colonial Tahiti, about the violence that's present in our society, about the poverty. And I didn't know the kind of impact that the book was going to have at the time. When I wrote Pina, it was with the knowledge of the impact the first book had had. And so I did feel pressure because I knew that the words that I was using and the words that I would writing would have an importance and that many people wanted to read them.
I have one question connected to that, but one next question. Titaua, did the be scared to write about anything in Pina because of the reaction you had to mutisms?
Excuse me, Jeffrey, can you repeat?
Yep. Because of how mutisms were received, did you be scared to write about anything in Pina?
Non, oui et non, parce que je savais qu'on m'attendait au tournant, c'est une expression française pour dire qu'il fallait que je fasse attention quand même. Donc, oui, j'avais un peu peur quand même pour Pina, mais finalement, ça s'est bien passé. Et puis, grâce à toi, aujourd'hui, elle va être connue dans le monde.
In answer to your question, yes and no. It's true that I did realize that it was important for me to pay attention to writing the book, presenting the book, but at the same time, I found that the book was well received, and so it was an okay experience then.
This is maybe getting into the weeds a little bit, but Jeffrey, I'm curious, in that first sentence, you didn't translate the word quartier, you just kept it in French. And I'm glad that you didn't use the word neighborhoods because it has a different feeling, or district, or whatever the translation would be. But I'm just always curious how translators make that kind of decision. There was another example that you talked to me about with the words with Cinderella. I think in the original French it's cassette, and you weren't sure that Americans were going to have the same relationship with Les Miserables, and so you chose Cinderella. I'm just wondering, in either case, whichever one is more interesting for you to talk about, how you make those kinds of calls.
I think one of the things we wanted to keep at the front of my mind was that even though Titaua wrote Pina, we would honor the penis of the word. She also wrote it very consciously. Readers may not necessarily be fully aware of all of the nuances of the city. And I wanted to make sure that I didn't try to domesticate the book at all. I did want to preserve some of that distance so that if you were going to read the book, you would be willing to sign up for the whole experience. So I wanted that challenge at the very beginning. If you can't get through that one word at the very first sentence, then this may not be the right book for you. But if you can make that very small jump, a word that's quirky and that you pick up very quickly, it means district. If you can get over that hurdle, this is a book, it's the word that you can enter, if you can come to understand. So the kind of dark passage of not overly domesticated, but also not considering too far out of this comfort zone.
Yeah.
There was kind of a body that I had to enact the way I translated the book. This came out most clearly when it was trying to decide how to handle words that in the original French were in Tahitian and not French. At that, okay, there's a glossary, I can leave the glossary, or I can try to figure out how to embed the meaning. That allows readers to get more of a handle of what's going on in the text, what they're seeing, what they're thinking about. So I did the end result, but to create a text that felt respectful of the original hybrid nature of the country, where you have French and Tahitian, but sometimes one is considered more respectable were more accessible than the other. But it was something that they would think about if I'm not going to make a piece together. And I hope I managed to put it up.
Yeah, no, absolutely. This is a distinctive voice. And while it's probably different for French readers and English readers, there's just, it is a book that is it has a voice from the beginning, and you're hooked. And then Titaua, going back to Tahiti, there's this lovely dedication that says that the book is for all the Pinas in the world. And then there's a second epigraph that says that the book is in memory of Patrice Aka. And I was just wondering if I could only find a little bit about that case online. So I'm wondering if you could just tell us a little bit about the case and how it affected you and inspired the novel.
Oui, alors, Patrice Aka est un petit garçon de 2 ans qui a été assassiné par sa mère. Et en fait, c'est une histoire très triste. On appelle ça un fait divers à Tahiti, mais c'est quelque chose qui m'a beaucoup, beaucoup blessée. Parce que, en fait, on voyait que cette famille qui vivait isolée dans la pauvreté a été abandonnée par les pouvoirs politiques, sociaux, par la société elle-même. Donc, cette mère qui était en danger psychologiquement, qui n'avait aucun moyen matériel, qui vivait elle-même de souffrance, qui avait été violée dans son enfance. Là, on voyait que la misère avait rattrapé cette famille et cette mère de famille, qui avait plusieurs enfants d'ailleurs, a tué son enfant petit à petit. Cet enfant n'avait que 2 ans, elle l'a frappé, tabassé tout le long de sa petite vie. Et je voulais dédier ce livre à cet enfant qui n'a pas vu la vie assez longtemps et qui est mort de manière tout à fait... C'est un innocent qu'on a tué, qu'on a sacrifié sur l'autel de la misère sociale, misère économique, misère mentale, toute la misère qu'on peut imaginer. Donc, c'était pour lui rendre cet hommage.
Yes, Patrice Aka was a 2-year-old boy who was killed by his mother. And it's a very sad story. And at the time, it was just like a regular story in the news. It wasn't, a major news event, but it affected me very deeply. And it's really a story about what happens when you have this family that was very isolated and very poor. And they felt themselves completely abandoned by society. They didn't have any kind of aid from the government or any kind of assistance from anyone. And so they were really very, very alone. And the mother, who suffered from some psychological problems as well, never had any assistance either. And so they were more or less living and she had multiple children. This was not her only child. And she was suffering and the whole family was suffering, but there was no help that was available for them. And she was greatly affected by it. And she really began to slowly kill this child who was 2 years old when he died. And I dedicated it to him because he was really a young boy who was an innocent, and he was an innocent who was really sacrificed on the altar of poverty and on the altar of a society that didn't really focus on this group and helping them. And so that was why I chose to dedicate it to him.
Did his family all live in the same part of Tahiti that Pina's family lives in? And is it Tenaho?
No. This family lived in Fa'a, another quartier.
Oh, okay.
Another city.
I wanted to ask you, this book is very skeptical of journalists. For example, when a character named George, who's a pimp, is murdered, the story in the paper refers to him as a charity worker who went and helped girls and boys in the street. And in going to Moïra as a journalist, I wasn't prepared for how wary people would be of who I was and what my intentions were. And I wondered if you could talk a little bit about in what ways you think journalists have misrepresented or contributed to the misrepresentation of Polynesian people outside of the country.
Oui, je pense très sincèrement que les journalistes de mon pays ont longtemps été muselés déjà. On leur a interdit beaucoup, enfin pendant longtemps, de parler de la face sombre de notre pays, de la face aussi sombre du colonialisme, des questions très importantes, même sur l'indépendance. Donc, pendant de très longues années, les journalistes n'ont fait que relayer la parole du gouvernement, et en l'occurrence à l'époque de M. Gaston Flosse, par exemple, ou alors de la colonie française. Donc voilà, c'était... ils ont également joué leur part dans une espèce de mystification du pays, ou en tout cas une espèce d'exotisme aussi, en voulant parfois, souvent, cacher la vérité. Et heureusement que les choses sont en train de changer aujourd'hui.
Yes, I think, very sincerely, the journalists in my country were really muzzled for quite a long time. They were unable to really speak the truth about what they were seeing and to really show the dark side of what our society is like, and the dark side of colonialism, the dark side of poverty, the dark side of the whole situation that the population was living in. And even when the independence movement was being talked about, they weren't speaking about it. They were really pretty much almost a mouthpiece for the government and presenting the government's point of view. So that was pretty much what was being presented. And this point of view really is almost like a mystification of what was really happening, or a focus on the exoticism of what our society was, rather than really speaking openly about what was happening.
That's interesting that I was thinking almost of foreign journalists coming without enough knowledge and presenting this very superficial picture to the rest of the world, but I wasn't even thinking about local journalists being sort of muffled and kept from telling the story, especially of a fight for independence. That's really interesting. I think everyone who picks up this book, your sympathies will be with Pina from the beginning. But this is an incredibly ambitious novel that I can't believe the number of points of view that you occupy in this book. As somebody who writes fiction, it was really I was sort of awed. And it also doesn't shy away from the points of view of even the most despicable characters, like Auguste, Pina's father. And in spite of the incredible violence that he inflicts on his family, he also, the end of the book signals maybe a tiny bit of redemption for him. And I was curious to know why it was important to you to have Auguste tell part of the story.
Eh bien, dans Pina, je ne voulais pas décrire ou inventer des personnages qui soient tout blancs ou tout noirs. Le métier, je pense, d'un romancier, d'une romancière, c'est également d'écrire sur les zones grises, les zones cachées de chacun des personnages. Et Auguste, malgré sa violence, malgré... c'est un violeur, c'est un menteur, un homme qui a un alcoolique, etc., a gardé en lui une espèce de tristesse qui est due également à la colonisation dans son pays. Il est descendant d'un guerrier, de guerriers qui ont fait la guerre contre l'État français dans les années 1800, etc. Il a un lourd passé derrière lui. Sa mère, par exemple, a assassiné son père. Il le sait, tout ça. Il garde en lui beaucoup de colère et de tristesse, mais en même temps, ce qu'il veut, il veut nettoyer son pays, nettoyer entre guillemets, il veut la rédemption pour sa famille, et pour ces jeunes filles les jeunes filles de Tahiti qu'il va sauver de la prostitution. Donc voilà, c'est un humain avec un grand H, un homme avec un grand H, malgré tout.
When I was writing the book, I really didn't want the characters to be black and white. What I really wanted to do was explore in each of them the gray areas and the hidden areas that we don't usually see. And every character has these. And so this was what I wanted to explore. In the case of Auguste, you have a man who is a rapist, a liar, an alcoholic, and yet he's really someone who's retained within him a certain kind of sadness. And it's a sadness that is really due to the fact that he's a descendant of the effects of colonialism. And in his past, he's a descendant of a great warrior in the 1800s who had fought against the French colonialists. But he also is the descendant of a mother who murdered his father. And so he retains all of this sadness within him. And it's the sadness, but it's also mixed with anger, because on his positive side, what he really is interested in doing is really to clean up his country, to make it a better place, to make the lives of these young girls on the streets better, to make their lives cleaner. And so this was a more well-rounded character is what I was looking to present.
Yeah, and that's exactly what you did. And I didn't actually see the connection with the Patrice Ake case until you answered that question. But the idea of this original violence inflicted on a place kind of multiplying and being amplified from generation to generation is this beautiful thing that you've shown us in the book. I think it would be great to hear a little bit from Pina now, if Titaua, if you want to read this part that we selected, and then maybe Jeffrey, are you going to read in English?
Yeah,
Okay.
today read up with the section from page 15 of the copy, and the page comes as sees.
Excuse me, I don't remember the page.
Yeah.
15 à 16. 15 à 16.
D'accord, merci. Le père et la mère.
Die Matan Masivandu.
It's the section that begins in English, one morning Ma set off.
Yep.
About Mate,
When she goes to visit the old woman, the healer.
okay.
I mean, but that was selected at random. So if there's something that you would prefer to read, I'm happy to hear anything.
Excuse me, Jeffrey, I would like you to read now because I have
Oh yeah.
yes.
So I can do that. Okay. So if we didn't just get that, but they didn't have a plan screen. Yeah. Here we go. Okay. When Ma set up to meet an old woman and Paia who lived in the house just as run down as herself. That day, when Ma went and stood at the yawning hole where the door was supposed to be, shivers ran up and down her back. Real shivers, not like some women showing up who tried to get sympathy. No, that day, she was more scared than she'd ever been in her whole life. She was scared of someone. She was scared of something that didn't exist. Something she felt in her gut, trembling her. dig its claws deep, something that had no explanation. Great then should have given anything not to have come here. Precious few people went all the way south from Hawaii to Paia, and even fewer by truck at the crack of dawn. She had reasons Hammond knew nothing of. When the old woman suddenly showed herself, Ma would have shrunk down as small as possible if she were able. She couldn't see a thing at first. It was that dark, but there was a presence, an awful smell that was half piss, half water dog, half jasmine perfume. Ma was about to throw up a boat home when the old woman said something like, I know why you have come. It would let out a cackle to all her missing teeth. It was curiosity, no pride actually. Ma was nothing if not proud. That set Ma's foot back on the step. She stayed stark still, waited for the next thing out of the old woman's mouth. And so Ma learned that her bunny was dirty, filthy, because it had kid after kid after kid, because she had to drink in blue after a single one of them. That bunny of hers, where babies in earth grew, was rotting from the inside out. And then the old woman said there was a deeper, darker problem at the root of it. Some evil thought, some hex someone had put on her. Ma's shivers only got worse, running from her lower back, slowly all the way up to her neck. Words like that, wishes like that, weren't just old wives' tales. The minute she was back home, Ma started gulping down a bitter, greenish potion. It took a good 3 days for it to do its work. 3 days of going to the bathroom and swimming up and down, that anything that's foul had to make something happen. The old woman told Ma that day, right before she left, that the child who would come that year would be a boy, and that he would be the handsomest of all. Ma could be so far or not to believe her, but the idea that a new boy would show up, put a smile on her face, and a glimmer of hope in her mind. A boy, how could she not love a boy? And so when, at long last, Pina came into the world, it was hate at first sight. It's very teaching. Titaua, do you want to read the French or would you rather not?
Yes. La vie d'Anna. On pourrait aussi faire voyager ce récit, pourquoi pas. On pourrait lui faire prendre le ciel pour le mener là-bas, dans ce pays qu'on appelle la mère patrie, dans ce pays des bouquins que ni Ma, ni Pina, ni Auguste, ni le pasteur ne connaissent, ni personne du quartier. La France, le pays du grand raffinement. Ils n'en ont presque rien à foutre. Ils connaissent les Français, ceux qui vivent ici, mais enfin, ce pays de toutes les lumières, ils s'en tapent royalement. Et pourtant, c'est là-bas que l'une de leurs filles est terrée, depuis maintenant 8 ans. Anna, fille de Ma et Auguste. Et oui, chez ces ignares, on sait s'appeler autrement. Surtout, on sait écrire son prénom différemment, avec 2 N et 2 H, en début et en fin de mot, s'il vous plaît. 2 H qui font protection, barrage. Les Anna écrits comme tel, c'est trop simple, vous savez. Anna, c'est Ma qui lui a trouvé ce prénom un jour qu'elle marchait dans la première librairie de papier-été. Oh, bien sûr, Anna ne connaissait rien d'Anna Arendt, rien de la banalité du mal, rien d'Eichmann, presque rien de la guerre non plus. C'est seulement que les origines du totalitarisme l'avaient captivée. Près du bouquin qui trônait tout seul dans la vitrine, il y avait une photo de l'Allemande au visage étrangement superbe et doux. Ma, ce jour-là, trottait vers le marché de papier-été, le ventre tout rond et les pieds lourds. Bien sûr, ni elle ni Auguste n'avaient arrêté de prénom, alors ça tombait très bien. Elle est entrée dans la boutique trop éclairée, trop propre, trop européenne, a demandé un stylo à la vieille caissière qui a eu le regard d'une femme de son âge et de sa bêtise. Ma a recopié le prénom qui faisait penser à la beauté, à la tendresse sur la paume de sa main, et c'était le début de l'histoire du prénom d'Anna T, tahitienne, fille de rien du tout.
Thank you.
Easy.
Pina's mother doesn't have a name in the book. She's either just called Ma or Teravahin, that woman. I'm wondering why you made that decision.
C'était pour moi une façon de objectiver cette personne, puisque au début, elle n'est pas aimable. Je ne voulais pas lui donner de visage, donc de prénom. C'est juste à la fin, quand tout s'arrange, qu'on découvre qu'elle a un prénom français en plus.
That makes sense.
I think it was really my way of objectifying her, because at the beginning, she's not really a very friendly kind of character. And so by not giving her a name, I was able to maintain that. And it's only really at the end that we learn about her name, because at that point, she's become more of a sympathetic character.
Yeah, there are those arcs with almost all the characters in the book. Nobody, as you said, nobody's black and white, but they also, everyone changes, which is what novelists are always going for. I've read that this is the first Tahitian novel that deals with homosexuality at all in the relationship between Pina's brother and her French lover, Francois. And I'm wondering why it was important to you to write about the relationship, and also how it's been received in Tahiti.
Alors, il était important pour moi de parler de cet amour homosexuel entre deux garçons, entre deux hommes, pour quelque part, comme un clin d'œil, mais aussi un hommage à la communauté gay dans mon pays, qui, Dieu merci, est assez bien tolérée, même s'il y a encore des problèmes à ce niveau-là. Donc voilà, j'avais envie de raconter aussi l'amour qu'on ne raconte pas dans les romans, en tout cas tahitiens. Et puis, quelque part, pour moi, Pina, l'amour de Pina pour son frère, c'est le début de l'amour dans ce roman. C'est le premier amour, quelque chose de presque sacré. Et il était dans ma tête juste pas possible que Pauro puisse un jour vivre un amour avec une femme. Et pour moi, l'amour de Pauro et François était quelque chose de là aussi assez sacré que j'avais envie de mettre en avant. Mais je ne sais pas si on me comprend là-dessus. Hein?
I think that this was, it was important for me to show love in the book. And in deciding to show it as a homosexual love relationship, male homosexual love relationship, it was a way of acknowledging and paying tribute to the gay community that we have in Tahiti, and to express an idea of tolerance towards them. And it was also in showing love in the novel. The first love that we encounter in the novel is the novel that Pina has for her brother, Pauro. And this love was almost a sacred kind of love. And it was almost impossible for me to imagine Pauro having a love relationship of that level with another woman. But the relationship that Pauro has with his lover, his male lover, is also a very sacred kind of love relationship. And so this was my way of showing that.
Gosh, I have a lot of questions and I want to make sure we get to the audience questions. So I want to pick and choose, but I'm sure most of us are aware of nuclear testing by the US and by France in the Pacific. But until I went to Moïra, I really didn't know that underground nuclear tests had continued in the region and up until the late 90s. And I didn't know that Polynesian women over 40 have the highest rate of thyroid cancer in the world, which people attribute to these tests. And so I was wondering, because it's not the center of this book, but it does influence this family, whether you want to talk about how the legacy of that testing plays out in Pina, in the story of this family.
Alors, il faut savoir que dans mes deux romans, les essais nucléaires ont une part importante dans l'histoire, sans être au centre de mes romans. Les essais nucléaires sont pour moi un événement trop important, trop blessant pour que je les oublie dans mes histoires. C'est pour ça que je les mets, en tout cas, à l'arrière-plan. Mais en même temps, on comprend que dans la façon de penser, façon de voir des caractères des personnages de mes romans, il y a cette blessure béante, cette béance, cette blessure que la France jamais ne guérira. Ça affecte ça a affecté la vie de mes concitoyens par l'exode rural, par exemple, puisque tout le monde a quitté son île pour venir travailler à Tahiti, autour des essais ou carrément sur les sites nucléaires. Donc voilà, ça a été en tout cas des événements très, très négatifs qui ont malheureusement fait exploser la population, la vie polynésienne, et c'est ça qu'on retrouve dans mes personnages, dans leur vie en tout cas. Même s'ils ne sont pas touchés directement, ou alors un de mes personnages a le cancer et on se doute que le cancer vient de Moïra, je tiens toujours à rappeler cette honte. La France devrait avoir honte de nous avoir infligé ça. Et autour des essais nucléaires, il y a aussi le développement économique fulgurant, mais en même temps foudroyant, qui a foudroyé la population, et qui a fait qu'on a été dans une perte de repères très vite. En une génération, on a presque tout perdu. Donc oui, les essais sont là et il appartient aujourd'hui à nous, au peuple autochtone, d'en parler et de demander réparation.
It's true that the nuclear testing was something that was of tremendous importance. And for me, it was something that was so important that it was almost impossible to deal with it as the main focus, but it's something that's always present in the background of everything that's happening and everything that goes on in the life of these characters. And it's also something that has had a profound effect on the way of thinking of the people who are living there. And thinking of this as this is really a wound that's been inflicted on Tahiti by the French, and it continues to remain a wound that is really impossible to heal. And it's something that has had an enormous effect on the population because of the areas where there was testing. There was a lot of movement of population to try to go to areas that were more hospitable, that were better places for work, that were perhaps healthier places, but the negative effects are still very present, and it's something that has had an enormous effect on the population. It's something that just exploded within the population, and in a sense, it really created a kind of a lost generation of people that were involved in this time when there were the tests and there was this population movement, and there was this great unsettled situation among the people who were living there. And so this is something that I also try to express through my characters. And for example, it's true that there is, like, one of my characters does have cancer, and there is the implication that it may have been in some way related to this testing, but it's a way of showing how this affected everyone.
Absolutely. All right, I'll open it up. Don't be shy. Anyone who has a question, please put it in the Q&A. I can't see it in the chat. I can just see it in the Q&A. So the first question, this is anonymous. I'm always interested in the reception of a book in different contexts. Titaua, how has the reception differed in Tahiti and in France? And has it been different still in the US? Thank you.
Alors, la réception du livre a été, donc, comme je disais tout à l'heure, très positive à Tahiti, puisqu'ils attendaient, mon second roman. En France, le lectorat français, pas tout le lectorat, mais a commencé à me connaître grâce à Pina. Donc, ça a eu un bon retentissement aussi, notamment par le prix Eugène Dabit, et aussi une bonne tournée au sein de la France. Et par contre, pour les États-Unis, je ne sais pas encore, peut-être que Jeffrey le sait. Je ne sais pas si c'est bien reçu.
It's brand new here. Yeah, go ahead.
Regarding the reception of the book in Tahiti, it was a very positive reception. As I mentioned before, people were waiting for me to write my second book. And so when it was released, the reception of it was really very, very good, because it was long awaited. In France, I think the reception was positive in the sense that more readers were getting to know me and getting to know me through my work and learning about me. And through this, more people are beginning to read it. So I would say that it was very positive. It did win a literary prize, and I did go on book tour in France and did have a very positive reception for it. As far as the reception in the US is concerned, it's still very new. So I don't really have that kind of feedback yet.
And here, this is the question that every writer wants to have in the chat. Titaua, what are you currently working on?
Where or what?
What are you? Yeah. Oh, what are you currently working on? What is your next book about?
Yes. Donc mon prochain roman est un roman qu'on appelle dystopique, et il s'agit de parler de la situation toujours de mon pays, de mon peuple, mais dans les années 2036, après un référendum sur l'indépendance qui malheureusement va mal tourner à cause de des puissances coloniales, pas seulement françaises, dans le Pacifique. Donc, j'ai envie de raconter une Polynésie que je projette, et aussi parler des possibles dangers d'une indépendance non préparée.
My next novel is what you would call a dystopian novel. And it's taking place in the future, 2036, when there is a referendum on independence. And it really goes into what happens to a society, always my own society, Tahiti, when you have independence that has not been planned, and what can go wrong. And so that's the focus of the new book.
I'm very eager to read that. This is for the author and the translator. Which character did you find the hardest to write or to translate? Titaua, do you want to start? And was there one character who was harder for you to write than the others?
Donc, le plus difficile à écrire et à décrire, c'est Auguste. Auguste, quand même, avec toutes ses parts d'ombre. Mais aussi puisque normalement, une mère, c'est une personne aimante, chaleureuse, etc. mais j'ai dû quand même me forcer un peu le trait pour qu'au début, elle ne soit pas aimable. Donc, c'est vraiment les parents qui ont été difficiles pour moi à écrire.
I guess I would say first it would be Auguste, the father. But I think the character of Ma was also a difficult to write because normally the character of the mother is someone who's very loving and someone who is lovable. And at the beginning, when we meet Ma, she is not a lovable character. And so in this respect, she was a little difficult for me to write.
Jeffrey, what about you?
Similarly, it was August, but the difference is that there is not even. It was possible to kind of get interesting where he would come about to that maybe difficult perspective and the word around him. So that part I could kind of get my head around. It never really made it difficult for me with that. Because I was fully conscious, he would sometimes slip in and out of the word around him, and I had to really keep track of that when I was translating the text. There's actually a very specific section where you cannot tell if he's hallucinating or having a daydream, or if he's describing something that's actually happening. And I was actually having a conversation with one of my friends when I was typing the translation. And at one point, I had to cut out my friend and say, "Look, step, I need to finish this page because I don't know if a murder just happened or not." I mean, it was that unclear. So I had to sit everything aside and get into that and tease out all the pieces. And then it said, "Okay, I don't think someone died." Turns out it was wrong. But anyway, that was a tip. Think of that Titaua.
Jeffrey, we're gonna put you on the spot again in a minute, but I'm gonna ask Titaua one other. How did you decide? How and why did you decide to structure the book with the poem interspersed? You know, at the beginning of each chapter, one more line of the poem. Why did you make that decision?
I don't really understand.
I have Ellen. Ellen will ask.
Pourquoi avez-vous décidé de structurer le roman, commençant tous les chapitres, toutes les parties avec ce poème, chaque fois ajoutant un peu plus de vers?
Alors, en fait, lorsque j'ai commencé à écrire Pina, c'était dans une période de tristesse puisque je venais d'apprendre l'assassinat de Patrice Aka. Et Pina est né d'abord d'un poème, c'est normalement un poème d'une page, une page et demie. Et je pensais que ça allait faire quelque chose de différent si j'arrivais à distribuer ce poème tout le long du livre. C'est-à-dire que finalement, par un effet de surprise, on arrive à la fin du poème et on découvre que la petite Pina va se tuer, mais je n'en dis pas plus parce qu'il faut laisser le lecteur découvrir, quoi. C'était une trouvaille tout à fait par hasard, quoi. Voilà.
It was actually sort of an accidental, it came about accidentally. It was a time that was particularly sad for me when I started because I had just read this story about Patrice Aka and what had become of him. And so I realized that I needed to write this poem. And so I wrote this poem and the poem about Pina. And then as I started to write the novel, I realized that it would be interesting to really disperse the poem throughout the book, each time adding a little bit more. And up to the point where in the end, and I'm not going to say anything more because I don't want to spoil it, but there is a surprise for the reader, and that's involved in the conclusion of the poem.
Jeffrey, here's another one for you. How did you first come to translate Francophone literature from the Indian Ocean and the Pacific?
is kind of roundabout. Basically, when I was thinking about getting into translation, I was asking different people who I knew for recommendations for different books that they could not believe did not exist in English yet. And one of my colleagues said, "Oh, there's this book by this author named Dabit." So I picked it up. It ended up translated. It's called Eve Out of Her Ruins. And as I did that book, I had to learn all about this island in the middle of the Indian Ocean. And I mean, it was an absolutely wonderful book to work on. And as I got into it, I started getting curious about different writers from that island. And one of the people who gave me the most information and background about all of this was a professor named Thomas Spear, who does a lot of literature from different islands across all of the oceans of the world. And so he kind of become a go-to resource for books from Mauritius and other places. And then later on, a different friend of mine said, "Hey, there's some book from Tahiti that won an award." And because I was still learning so much, I said, I didn't know they were books from Tahiti to begin with. And then looked it up, and it was extremely fascinating. So I asked the same colleague, Thomas Spear, do you know about this book? He said, "I know about the author. I also know the editor. Let me connect you with them." And that kind of got the whole ball rolling. One of the jokes is when they make about this is that in French, the phrase for when swallow does not make a summer is une fois les pas coutume. Literally means one time is not custom. So when they explain to people how spread over from an island in the Indian Ocean to an island in the middle of the Pacific, I say une île n'est pas coutume, and one island does not a Korean make. So Titaua, think of a welcoming me to a different island and for giving me ignorance of another world. I'm very grateful for that.
Thank you to you, Jeffrey.
We're so lucky. Your readers are so lucky that this collaboration has happened, and I'm so eager for Mutismo to be translated so I can read it properly, and also for your next novel. So thank you so much. I think that's all of our questions and all of our time.
Yeah, thank you, all four of you. This has been phenomenal, really fascinating and far-ranging conversation, both metaphorically and literally both sides of the Atlantic, all the way to the Pacific. So thank you all for joining us. Those of you at home, please consider purchasing a copy of Pina from Community Bookstore while we're all waiting for Mutismo and for Titaua's next novel. We hope to see you at another virtual event very soon. Thank you for joining us. Have a great evening and bonne nuit.
Bonne nuit. Thank you.
Thank you so much.